Welcome into OutKick the show. I'm your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Wednesdays wherever you may be across the country. Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with Prize Picks, you against the number. Spring's here. Baseball season starts tomorrow. Sweet 16 also starting tomorrow. Lots of games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whether you like baseball, basketball, football, whatever you like. There's picks for you available out there right now on the Prize Picks app. Right now, if you go do it in the next 24 hours, you get Cooper flagged to score over 1/2 point at Prize Picks, a free square. I then have got another pick for you over on the points that we're going to see. Let me make sure that I get it pulled up correctly so I can get it right. I've got more on the points that are going to be there for Walter Clayton Jr., more than 14.5 points. He's been playing lights out, scoring over 20 in his last several games, each outing. And I like Zakai Ziegler more than 11.5 points as well. That is a Friday night game for Tennessee against Kentucky. If you go with all three picks, you will more than double your money, nearly triple your money. $20 turns into $52. And when you put in a pick of $5, you get back right now $50. You can play in Georgia. You can play in Texas. You can play in California. I love playing along with the Prize Picks app. You can as well. Download the app today. Use code OutKick for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code OutKick, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Okay. Several different things that are out there. Sweet 16, like I said, underway tomorrow. You will be seeing a gambling special show with Kelly Stewart, The Fade. We will be doing that, taping that as soon as I finish today's game. But for everybody out there, the game's on Thursday. I'm taking Bama to cover against BYU. I'm taking the Florida Gators to cover against Maryland. I'm going to take Arizona to keep it under 10 against Duke, and I am going to take Arkansas to cover against Texas Tech. A lot of SEC action there. We'll break all those games down for you. They started just after 7 o'clock on Thursday, and then on Friday we got a bunch more games, Saturday, Sunday, all that coming this way. I saw over 1,250 college basketball players have hit the transfer portal now. Basically, you just have pure chaos in terms of where guys are playing. There's no transfer restrictions. NIL is just pay for play. Guys are making money hand over fist. This is all crazy town. I do think there's going to, at some point, have to be a solution, a salary cap of some sort. I've told you that I think these players are going to end up employees. But basically, the Berlin Wall has come down. And this is completely unregulated, market-based capitalism. And it reminds me of what happened when Eastern Europe suddenly went capitalistic. Not only could you sell your car or a home, as is standard, you could sell a kidney. You could sell a nuclear weapon. You were able to buy and sell virtually anything. Eventually, regulations come in to some degree. I suspect that's what we'll see. But right now, pure, unabashed market capitalism, zero restrictions on movement. Also, even the agents that are repping these players have no long-term relationship with the teams because most of them are not professional agents. So it's not like the agent's going to have to work with the team for the next 10 or 20 years. It's a one-off. Guys are agreeing to terms and then going back and saying, hey, I need $200,000 more. Guys are saying, hey, I'm going to sit out unless you pay me more. Coaches are losing their minds. Donors are starting to get tapped out. It is a mess, and I think we're going to have a resolution sooner rather than later. And the resolution, to me, quite clearly, is going to end up being a CBA of sorts. But in order to have a CBA, the individual players have to be employees. You have to have a union. There's a lot of legal hoops to jump through. And this is going to sound a little bit like me being a nerd. But if you don't have a union to organize a CBA, then any restraint on payment, which is where we are right now, or movement, is considered to be an antitrust violation. So if you're wondering how in the world are there no restrictions on transfers, it's because it would be an antitrust violation. How in the world are there no limitations on what guys can be paid? It's because it would be an antitrust violation. And so the way that you get around that is by having a CBA. That's a collectively bargained agreement. There is an antitrust exemption there because the understanding is that if your union is negotiating with your employer, that you are going to advocate for yourself to such an extent that there is no antitrust charge that can be brought. So, for instance, the NBA has a players' union, the NFL has a players' union, hockey, NHL has a players' union, MLS has a players' union. Baseball has a players' union that's so strong, they so far have been able to avoid a salary cap, which is why, even though the season starts tomorrow, a lot of people are already anointing the LA Dodgers as the champs because they're spending, I think the number is, Adam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think their cost for players is $400 million this year, which is orders of magnitude greater than many other different teams out there. Now, to be fair, 16 different Major League Baseball teams have won the World Series in the past 20 years, I believe, ish. So there's been a great deal of variety in terms of championship teams in Major League Baseball. But I do think a lot of baseball fans are looking around. A lot of college basketball fans are looking around and saying we've got a broken system. If we want to maintain competitive integrity in the sport in some way, what do we need to do to make that happen? To me, players are going to have to, in college, basketball, men's players, and football are going to have to go into a union at some point in time in order to make that happen. Just now in the last, couple of hours, LeBron James went on ESPN on Pat McAfee's show and ripped Stephen A., said that he was expecting Stephen A., as soon as his name got mentioned by LeBron, to be sitting in his tighty-whities eating ice cream gleefully on the couch. I'm paraphrasing LeBron there. And LeBron said that basically Stephen A. was on a Taylor Swift-like tour talking about the discussion that the two had courtside. Here's the reality. LeBron created this story. As much as you can accuse Stephen A. of sensationalizing stories, which on some level is his job, he is judged on ratings, and so he has to be as entertaining as possible, and the show has to be as entertaining as possible. LeBron could have had a private conversation with Stephen A. Easily, they could have agreed to talk somewhere where the entire arena wouldn't see them and where there wouldn't be video recordings of everything that was said between the two. LeBron made this a story. Now he's complaining about Stephen A. making it a story. It feels a bit to me like a wrestling work. In other words, where we're all getting played for purposes of ratings and entertainment. Certainly with Pat McAfee being at WWE, that aspect of the story can continue to get reinforced. But LeBron made this a story. First, LeBron made the Lakers draft his son, even though his son is not talented enough to have been one of the, 60 players that were drafted in last year's draft. The only reason that Bronny James got drafted is because his dad is LeBron. We've never seen that happen in the history of pro sports. There has never been a situation where a dad said, you better draft my son, and I want him playing on the team with me. That's never occurred. So it is a pretty extraordinary thing to happen. How do you not talk about it? You can argue, well, it's no big deal. Nepotism happens all the time. Okay, but sports is supposed to be the antithesis of nepotism. The best man or the best woman is supposed to get to be on the team. You can say, well, owners of teams hire their sons and daughters and put them, okay, but that isn't the expectation that they are the best for those jobs. And in fact, oftentimes, those sons and daughters of owners get ripped to shreds for the fact that they got their jobs. But I don't think anybody out there is arguing that sports executives are the most talented business people in the world. Everybody who plays in the NBA or Major League Baseball or the NHL or the NFL is, in theory, the best at what they do, that collection. That's why you are playing in the pros. LeBron changed that by using his power to guarantee that his son got drafted, which would have otherwise never happened. How do you not talk about that if you are Stephen A. or if you're Clay Travis? You created an untenable situation for your family. You put Bronny in an uncomfortable situation, and then you can't get angry when people point out that you have created that situation. And if you are angry about it, there's all sorts of ways to have private conversations that don't occur on the court during a Lakers game where the whole world can see it happen. You, LeBron, created the drama. You, LeBron, created the public spectacle. Everybody's talking about it. Stephen A's job is to talk about the drama and public spectacle of sports, among other things, even when he himself becomes a character in the drama and spectacle of sports. So you can't then complain that LeBron talked about it when you are the reason that it's created. And then, again, the reason why I feel like it's a work is Stephen A. LeBron won't go on First Take, which is actually a much higher rated show. No offense to Pat McAfee, it just is, than the Pat McAfee show. Instead, he goes on Pat McAfee show, which I believe airs right after First Take. I'm not an expert in the television schedule because I'm on the air a lot too, and I don't typically watch sports programming when I'm on the air. I'm making sure we're not missing any major stories. And then he goes on the show right after Stephen A. to rip Stephen A. Frankly, I think it's cowardly of LeBron. So to the extent that I am on one side or the other in this situation, in this spectacle, in this conflict, in this feud, I'm going to be on Team Stephen A. because I don't think Stephen A. Smith has done anything wrong. I haven't heard him be intensely personal of LeBron James. I haven't heard him in some way rip Bronny for not being talented enough to play in the NBA in some way. He said the honest truth, which is the only reason why LeBron's son is in the NBA is because LeBron demanded it. And I don't know how that's supposed to be controversial or unacceptable to say, and I don't know what LeBron's mad about. So that's my analysis there. Some positive news. The World Track and Field universe has decided that they are going to keep men from competing in women's sports. And the way they are going to do that is not incredibly invasive. In fact, it's very easy. They're going to do cheek swabs and make sure that men are not identifying as women and trying to win women's championships. Good for them. I don't know why every sport wouldn't do this. If you feel like you are being excluded, I saw J.K. Rowling share this. If you are a male athlete, go compete in men's sports. You're not excluded. Your gender identity does not dictate where you should be competing in sports. And I feel like sanity is beginning to return, and I like the decision that's being made by the World Track and Field organization. And I would encourage every league to do something similar of this nature. All right. I got fired up about this yesterday. My take on Snow White has gone mega viral. It's echoing across a lot of different social media sites. And I was still fired up about it last night. And I was talking about it with my wife. We went to a songwriting, open mic songwriting where they come out and they explain how they decided to come to write these hit songs. Actually pretty cool. They do a lot of these in Nashville. We were there. I think it's called Tin Pan South last night. We're driving home. And I'm having a conversation with my wife, and I say, Sydney Sweeney should have gotten the role of Snow White. Now, Buck, I'll get to Sydney Sweeney, back to her in a sec. Buck, and I co-sign on this, it's going to end up a headline somewhere probably. Buck said Rachel Zegler is simply not attractive enough to be Snow White. She's fine, but I kind of agree. I don't think she's attractive enough. And look, I get it. I'm fat, old, and ugly. So that doesn't mean that I'm saying that I should be Prince Charming. I shouldn't. But the flaw here, as I pointed out yesterday, is Gal Gadot is objectively far more beautiful than Rachel Zegler. So if the entire premise of the movie is the evil queen stares into the mirror and asks who the fairest of them all is, and Snow White is the answer, and that is what begins the conflict between the evil queen and Snow White, Gal Gadot is way better looking than Rachel Zegler. So there is no conflict, and Snow White doesn't work on a basic casting call here. Now, Sydney Sweeney should have been cast. Bob Iger is the CEO of Disney. Disney stock right now is $20 lower today, basically, than it was 10 years ago. So if you had gone out, I was looking at my handy app the other day, meaning today, Disney stock is right around $100 a share right now. And if you had bought Disney stock, I'm going to get this right, make sure I get it exactly right. If you had bought Disney stock on July 19th, 2015, that is nearly a full decade ago, Disney stock was just shy of $120 a share. In fact, it was $118.91 on July 19th, 2015. That is nearly a decade ago. Right now, Disney stock is $100. So Bob Iger has run this company for a decade. He has made hundreds of millions of dollars. And if you had simply bought Disney stock and held it for a decade, it has not panned out. You have not made any money. In fact, you've lost 20% of the overall stock price value. But you also, given inflation over the last decade, have lost a lot more than 20%. And in the 10 years, the stock market as a whole, the S&P 500, has more than doubled. So not only have you lost in real dollars, right? When you factor in inflation and you factor in dividends and everything else, you have done awful by buying Disney stock. Bob Iger could have come to me and I would have told him, hey, put Sydney Sweeney in Snow White and you will make $1 billion. You will be like Scrooge McDuck diving into the vault of all the cash that you will make if you make Sydney Sweeney Snow White. I'm convinced I'm right about this. My wife disagrees. My wife says that I have been befuddled, bedazzled, and have had the wool pulled over my proverbial eyes because I am allowing Sydney Sweeney's boobs to distract me from the fact that she is too old to play Snow White. I asked you guys, and by the way, for people who are like, nobody cares, 16,000 people have voted in this in the first hour already. I say if Disney had cast Sydney Sweeney as Snow White, the movie would have made $1 billion. My wife says I'm wrong, a moron, and distracted by Sweeney's boobs. Who's right? Lots of people weighing in the comments. OutKick's own Tommy Laren says, it's a children's movie, Clay, with emoji faces. To which I responded, parents go too. Ben Domenech says, opening night, I'm there. Dean Cain, former Superman, I think you both have good points. The comments are absolutely hysterical. I would encourage you all to go check them out. They are really, really funny. You will enjoy it if you go and read the comments. I stand by it. Sydney Sweeney would have made at least $1 billion for Bob Iger and Disney if they had simply cast her as Snow White. Bob Iger could have called me. He could have texted me. I could have hooked him up. Instead, they went with Rachel Zegler, who is not as good looking as Gal Gadot, who is actually awful and woke, hates Trump voters, many of whom are deciding not to take their kids to go watch this awful remake. And as a result, Snow White is going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. It may end up being, when you factor in marketing cost and what it costs to make the movie, the least successful movie ever made because it cost well in excess of $500 million, and there is no way it is going to get out of there without losing hundreds of millions of dollars. Everything woke, Donald Trump was right about this, goes to shit. And Snow White, which in 1937 made $4 billion for Disney, basically created the entire Walt Disney Company. Well, guess what? Now everything has fallen completely apart. They should have gone with Sydney Sweeney, even if her boobs are a distraction. You know what? It would have been fine. America would have been better off. The Snow White movie would have been a success. Boobs and the First Amendment never let me down. All right. Get your picks in for Prize Picks. Code OutKick. More for Walter Clayton Jr., more for Zakai Ziegler, automatic free square for Cooper Flagg. When we, as soon as I finish this show, Kelly Stewart is going to be with me. We're going to be breaking down the Sweet 16 games for all of you. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. I am Clay Travis, and this has been OutKick, the show.